Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Culture. My name is Bella Moore, and I'm the Youth Coordinator and Educator at Ishar. I'll be a facilitator for today's seminar, and we are talking about disability within culturally and linguistically diverse communities. We will explore challenges faced by individuals with disability and in diverse communities. We will focus on language barriers, cultural stigmas, societal attitudes, and highlighting issues in accessing education and employment, and the need for inclusive policies and gaps in support services. Also, we will discuss systematic and self-advocacy to empower individuals to advocate for their own needs and rights. So, firstly, we'll start with an acknowledgement to country. Ishar Multicultural Women's Health Services acknowledges the Wajak Noongar people as the traditional owners of the land on which we provide our services. We continue to recognize and celebrate the spiritual connection that Noongar people have to country and waters, and pay our tribute to Noongar elders past, present, and emerging. This morning's agenda includes 2 speakers from different service providers and 1 lived experience speaker. We will open the floor for questions towards the end on stage when all 3 speakers come up. I'd just like to say we had a speaker and they send their apology, Wajma Padsha. So they are the Community Engagement Facilitator at Mission Australia. And yes, this was due to a family matter. All right, so let's get started with our first speaker. And this morning it's Sophia Salim. Sophia is a skilled project manager and community development worker based in Perth, with a passion for fostering inclusive communities and enhancing accessibility. Currently serving as a project manager at APM Communities, Sophia oversees strategic projects for diverse communities aimed at improving well-being and inclusivity across WA, NT, and QLD. Sophia holds a Master of Strategic Communications with UWA, and her academic journey was enriched with valuable mentorship and leadership skills in public relations and mass communication. Sophia's professional journey includes significant roles such as NDIS local area coordination, as she navigated the NDIS legislative framework to facilitate personalized support services for individuals with disabilities. As she ventured into community capacity building, she endeavors to work with key stakeholders, organizations, and community leaders and members to establish networks and increase their understanding of NDIS. Her tenure at a social enterprise in Singapore further honed her skills in outreach and engagement, focusing on developing community capacity to improve access and inclusion. With over 10 years working in developing community in Australia and Singapore, Sophia demonstrated a deep commitment to supporting vulnerable communities, leveraging community resources and partnership to foster sustainable change. Please extend a warm welcome to Sophia.
All right, hi everyone, good morning. My name is Sophia, and thank you, Bella, for the warm welcome and for the introductions. I would also like to thank Ishar, Noor, and the team for inviting us today. I wanted to start off by saying I'm Wajma, but Sophia couldn't make it, but then Wajma couldn't be here, so Wajma wanted to be here for us to actually co-facilitate this piece together. And unfortunately, she, due to family matters, she's not able to be here. So I hope I am able to share this piece for both of us. And I'm sure she would have loved to be here as well. So firstly, especially with NAIDOC Week that has just passed, I really would like to continue to acknowledge the lens that we are standing on today and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. with the theme of Need Not Wait this year, Keep the Fire Burning, Black, Loud, Proud. I hope that we can continuously appreciate all of the, the ongoing arts and creativity and ongoing amazing work out there by our communities, by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, by all that we are working with, and to continue our progress towards reconciliation and work together with everybody. Before I do that, just a little bit of an introduction myself. I know Bella has already shared a whole bio, which thank you, but just a bit of me on stage here. Today I come to you at a personal capacity as well, as a carer of loved ones with disability, as a member of somebody who has come from diverse communities, but more so as in my professional capacity, as a project officer in the community capacity building team with APM communities. Before today, can I just ask a show of hands if anybody has heard of APM communities and NDIS? Yeah? Thank you. So Culturally and Linguistically Diverse, CaLD. That's the acronym. That is the word that we hear a lot. But what does that look like, or what does that mean? There's no definitive definition on that that we can pinpoint, but through research and a lot of research out there, it is stated that, or debated, that it recognizes diverse backgrounds. It recognizes groups that speak other languages other than English. It recognizes that people who are born overseas or have parents who are born overseas. That is the term. But what does that look like in the context of disability, or of somebody having a disability? Is it all the same? Would somebody who's born overseas face the same experiences or different experiences? Any thoughts? You can just shout, if you're comfortable, just shout out your answer. If not, nods will be fine. Different, absolutely. Which brings me next to diversity in diversity. When I talk about diversity in diversity, we're talking about not just the experiences of somebody coming from a different country or culture or background, because we know that everybody is different. We know that if you are coming through a refugee and migrant pathway, your experiences and trauma will be different than to somebody who's coming in from, let's say they come to Australia for family unification to join their families. It will be different. The experiences will be different, the challenges will be different. I can also say if English is not your first language, your challenge will be different to somebody who is born overseas, but English is okay for them. So how do we look at the supports and services we provide, not just professionally, but even in our personal day-to-day lives, how that might look like for somebody coming in to completely new country, to new systems, new supports, new way of things, all of the government supports out there. How would we navigate that? If I can be completely honest, when I first moved to Australia, I had no idea what to look for. And I didn't know what I didn't know. I also didn't think I was eligible for anything. But that was my experience. I also support my community members who are also navigating the systems and don't think that they have the rights to any supports available by the government because they thought, yep, we're here, we just don't want to walk the board. Let's just leave it as that. So we see a lot of that in the communities that we are supporting, in the communities that we, especially when you add the intersectionalities. You add race, gender, you add disability, you add everything else. There are different challenges for people that just will not take a one-size-fits-all approach. So I was debating when I wanted to do stats because I'm sure everybody's already aware of this, but I just wanted to share a bit of a snapshot. We know that there are 30% of Australians, or Australia's population actually, born overseas. out of that, 26% have identified that they're from CaLD background. We know that in the ABS stats, it also indicates that 3% of the population indicated that they do not speak English very well, or they do not speak English at all. From the carers report, we know that between 25 to 30%, which is roughly about 500,000 of Australian carers, are from CaLD background, the culturally and linguistically diverse. However, it is likely that this is underrepresented numbers because if somebody, or this is an area I think we can all collectively improve in terms of data, because numbers can be underrepresented due to not wanting to share that they have a disability, or not wanting to share what the situation is with them, or not doing the census when it comes. So it's not captured. So there is a bit of a lack of reporting that it is in this space. However, this is what we know so far. There are also stats or research from the Disability Royal Commission that indicates that people who are coming in from refugee pathways or different backgrounds are more susceptible to violence or neglect, significant isolation, lack of access to supports and services because they don't know that they are able to do that, or that they have access to that. So these stats are just a bit of, like I said, a bit of a snapshot, but then again, in between that, there are a lot of different layers that would determine whether or not a community needs more support. And if I bring this back to the NDIS, this is, if I say the ABS stats is minimal or limited, we also have limited stats in the NDIS space, the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Out of all of the participants that are accessing the National Disability Insurance Scheme, we know that there is about 9 or 10% of people who are from the culturally and linguistically diverse background. Even though the numbers increased significantly in the last few years, there is still that 1 in 5, or the expected 20%, should be from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. But that's not the case though. Can anybody tell me why? Any thoughts on what the challenges might be in terms of accessing a support like the NDIS? Difficult to navigate, yeah. It's a complex system to some, especially if English is not their first language. Absolutely.
The language barriers?
Language barriers, yeah. Absolutely. What might be stigma? Yes, I heard you. That is a very good point. Stigma around disability, because we're talking about people coming from different generations, and back then supports like this were not available. So, and in some cultures and in some families, and I can also say in my own personal community as well, there is that stigma around wanting to seek help, wanting to keep it within the family. There is a stigma around, if I have a disability, then I may have been cursed, or I may have done something in my previous years, or things like that. So there's a lot of things that are attached to it. I actually wanted to do a little bit of an exercise, but I'm mindful of time and Laura's looking at me. So I might just skip this slide and look at these instead. So what I've noted on here are a few sentences that we've gathered from community. So I might just read them out. And these are anecdotal feedback and I guess in conversations that we have with community. The first one is, I don't know that I'm eligible for supports. If I go to a government service, will that impact my stay in Australia? I feel shame or guilt that I may have done something for having a disability. Anything that happens to me or to my family should be kept in the home. It's my responsibility. I shouldn't take it out into the community. My family was cursed. The kids are just naughty. They're just misbehaving. If I seek help, does that mean I'm poor? My support worker who is from the same community shared my story to the community, so not everybody knows and everybody treats me differently. I should put my head down and be grateful for what I have instead of seeking any help or support. If I use the NDIS supports available, we'll have to pay back. And I do not have the means for that. And as much as these are quite daunting sentences and feedback that we get from the community, these are lived experiences from people from various communities, and a lot more actually that I did not add to this slide. But I wanted to share, just to share the impact that somebody might have from various backgrounds, from being in remote areas, from the lack of access, from the lack of supports. They face not just systemic inequality, but also that limited access to resources. They face discrimination. Like I said earlier, you add other layers like race, gender, where you're from, even diversity within communities. You're talking about my community wouldn't want to talk to another community because there is that challenge. There are a lot of different layers, and I will say that I won't stand here today to say we can solve everything. But it is a work in progress. Everything is a work in progress, and that I think it takes shared effort and collaboration for us to work together to enhance the inclusion and access for community. Going back to the role of partners, and I know earlier on at the start I did say I did come here as in my professional capacity as well, and in my role with APM communities. So partners in the community are contracted by the National Disability Insurance Scheme or the National Disability Insurance Agency to deliver services and supports for community. But that being said, not a lot of people know who we are or what we do, which is why we have our teams out there reaching out to community to enhance inclusion and enhance the awareness, to develop relationships, to build trust, so that we can support people when they're ready to access something like this. I just wanted to share that there are two types of partners, and I'm pretty sure if I ask to show your hands if you know this information already, could I get a show of hands? I appreciate that. I asked to show hands, but I didn't have this. But that's great, because that's a reality as well. Is that we know about the NDIs due to perhaps our professional capacity, due to perhaps our day-to-day jobs and our day-to-day activities. But for communities on the receiving end or communities from diverse backgrounds, this might not be something that they would think or even think to access. It won't come up. And most of the time it's word of mouth. And I say word of mouth is really important, and I see you nodding your head right there. It's really important. I can tell my mom a piece of information and she'll just, no, you don't know what you're talking about. But she listens to an auntie from a different relative from a different community, and she comes back to say, did you know that I got this information? I'm like, well, I said the same thing, but okay. So that is what we're trying to do here, both Mission Australia and ourselves, in terms of the work that we do out in the community. We're trying to build relationships with communities, and we're trying to build trust with the community leaders to share about the NDIS. And I'm not going into the specifics like eligibility and all of that yet. I'm just talking about access to supports, access to something that you have rights to. Everybody has rights to the same supports available for everybody else. And I wanted to add this piece here because I also want to recognize that NDIS is not the only support available. It is one piece. But there are so many other pieces out there that or so many circles of supports that are needed to come together to help communities at large. And we're just one piece of that puzzle.
Post-migrations, when people come and migrate to Australia, what they discover is that they are losing some of these beliefs and practices. Like, for example, when they were in their own home country, they are overprotected and things like that. When they come here, they are living alone, they are isolated, they don't have people to take care of them and all that. And all those things becomes really post-migrational pathways, and to access supports and services becomes very difficult, particularly if they don't have the language, use of interpreters, they are not able, they don't understand English language, they are not able to access communicate information as they want. So all those things impact on them, and that becomes a big problem. So I'm just jumping into the consequences. Okay, I'm just looking at the consequences. Lack of access to professional accredited interpreter services, that's one of these. Fear of government, mistrust of governments and services. Still, there are people who are even up to now, they are not even aware of NDIS because they feel that it's a system for the government and they don't want to go, yet they have a disability. Fear of disclosure and attributions, those are other things. Exclusion from the labor market, and the question of thinking that, they can get on center as long as they can get social security, disability support pension, then they don't have a problem. So there's that kind of things. Dependency on others, still, particular high prevalence of myths, misconceptions, and negative stereotyping is still there. So you find that we come into the last aspect of it, which is really looking at systemic, advocacy and self-advocacy. When we're advocacy, this is independent advocacy, providing, supporting those people from culturally linguistically diverse with all what we have talked about, their cultures and all that. We find that most of them, they find that the system we're using here, even waiting, they want things to be immediate. For example, if we tell them that, we have a waiting list and you have to wait for 3 to 4 months, they find it very difficult. This organization is not helping me. Because why would I have an urgent need? So they think that things can be done within a short time period. So providing that advocacy services becomes a challenge. At the same time, they cannot do self-advocacy for themselves because they need to get the skills, yet they don't have the language skills, they don't have adequate information how they can advocate for themselves, and that becomes a real challenge for them. Now, the impact and barriers on CaLD people with disabilities. They experience extreme isolation and marginalization, poverty, financial vulnerability, and limited access to fewer opportunities, reduced capacity to participate in social, economic, political, and cultural life. Now, that brings us to the end, and we are making some conclusion remarks on that. Something must be done to dispel these perceptions. Must have a health system that helps its workforce to recognize their own cultural perceptions of health and disability. Must have a system that is better to recognize cultural differences where it occurs, must have a clear development of cultural competency among health and disability service providers, and greater community engagement. And that brings us to the conclusion of what I'm recommending as a conclusion. Those things, if you put them in place, then we are able to support the culturally and linguistically diverse populations in providing them sufficient supports and services. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure there was a lot to say and definitely could have used a lot more. I'd encourage, well, we're now going to take a break. I'd encourage all of you to just connect with the speakers, and then we'll come back in about 10 minutes to have our lived experience speaker, and then we'll get on stage and basically have the questionnaire and then close. All right, so thank you everyone. He's a qualified teacher and a counselor with extensive lived experience. She currently works as a counselor and student well-being advisor, focusing on adolescents in school setting. Saima holds a master's in education from Curtin University and a diploma in counseling from Murdoch University. Her passion and life purpose lie in educating and advocating for CaLD communities, particularly women and teenagers. Saima is dedicated to raising awareness about stigma and trauma within the general community. Please join us in welcoming Saima. All right, so this is your opportunity to ask any questions. The floor is for the audience mainly, so ask away.
If you want to integrate it and say, for instance, access supports provided by the NDIS, but you, I guess, have your cultural stigma of asking for, or fear of asking for support, or a sense of pride of asking for help, how can you, I guess, or how can a support worker help you navigate that so you can still access the support without feeling that you're, I guess, cheating on your full job?
We developed, actually I was part of the people who developed ambassador program. I don't know whether you heard about keen ambassadors. We picked people from culturally and linguistically diverse with a disability from the grassroots and started providing them education and how they can advocate for the community. And today, those members have done a lot of posts, they have written a lot of documents, they have engaged with the community, and they have helped hundreds of other people with a disability from CaLD background to understand services. So information is power. So that's the best way you can support. The best way is to understand what the individual person you are providing support wants to achieve in their life, which is the goals, isn't it? If the goals is to help to have health outcome, try to understand how best that person can get health outcome by providing information that will give them power. Information that will even make them self-advocate for themselves. All right? I'll give you another proverb in my community, okay? Although it's a very crude one, but at least it serves the purpose. In our community, we say, if you want to eat with a blind person, don't touch his hand. What does that mean? You want to eat with a blind person, don't touch his hand. What will happen if you touch his hand while you are eating with him or her? What will happen? I want someone to answer me that. Huh? No. No. No, I just want to answer. Okay, I'm eating with you, and you touched my right hand. What will I do? I will think that you are going to give me something. So I will put the whole food on your clothes. That's what it means. So don't touch his hand or her hand if you want to eat to the person. So that's a crude way, yes. You will say, oh, that proverb is very, very harsh, isn't it? On people who are blind. But it's not harsh, that's the reality. Okay? But if you understand, you tell the person, oh, Siad, I'm eating with you. Siad, I want to give you a cup of tea. Then I can raise up my hand and hold the cup properly, isn't it? But you didn't even tell me, and then you touched my hand, and I'm eating with you, and I will split the whole cup on your dress. So that's the thing. It's a power. The information is power. So that's the thing that you can be able to support. I hope I have answered your question.
Oh, no, I just wanted to add on to that really, is that, and this is coming from, I guess, we've had similar experiences with LACs, our local area coordinators, when we meet with participants from diverse backgrounds. One of the examples that I can give is that, yes, they have their cultural beliefs, yes, it is valid, yes, they are entitled to that. I think in situations like that, when we're trying to explain the social model of disability or even the Australian style of doing things, it often gets misunderstood that we're trying to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
Or that we're trying to tell them that this is the way that you should be doing it. Whereas if we sort of shift that narrative a little bit, or shift the messaging a little bit to, it is okay, you're right, that's absolutely your culture. However, if you're feeling like you want additional support that we can help you with, this is how we can go about doing that. Yes, you are the main carer, yes, you are the main person, you are responsible for your family. And if the time comes and you want to explore other options, these are the supports available that you can do that. And how can you work with other organizations out there that could help enhance that messaging as well? So that would be my 2 cents worth.
Just going back to your question about culture. I know it's a very difficult to process, but I feel that validation is very important. Validation of what it is that they're experiencing, and then guiding them along the path with patience. Because without patience, you're not going to get them to come to you for help. And that's another challenge. And also combating the stigma through cultural conversations. Having forums talking about it freely and openly, even mentioning it to them that, is that a stigma in your community? Do you find this difficult to deal with? Things like that, I think, open up pathways for people. And last but not least, I think this is a very underrated aspect of our culture, but we are a kind culture, So I feel that kindness can go a very long way in helping someone who might need the help but is afraid, especially people, people going through domestic violence, alcohol and drugs, young people dealing with these things. I feel those things are quite important, validation, opening pathways for them, sending them, to different avenues and saying, okay, this is an avenue for you, you can try this, you can try that, So having that knowledge about that culture as well, how that culture limits people, because each culture operates differently. Because, in African culture, these are the norms. In Indian culture, the norms are different. One of the norms in Indian cultures is you don't come up to people and you don't tell them your problems. Problems are better kept at home, and that's why I was very nervous coming today, because this is the first time I've actually ever spoken about my disability,
And having a psychosocial disability is very, very hard because not only people don't see it, people don't expect you to talk about it, you know? So that's another thing, having that space of acceptance where people can disagree, people can have their own point of view. We come from very different places, but the best thing about Australia is not only that it is a melting pot, but it's a democratic country, you know? So everyone has a right to have their own opinion, you know? And then I think that creates a space for change and for, you know, change, I guess.
So just to add on that, there are two elements that probably will be able to help us also. This is using what we call the person-centered approach and trauma-informed approach. Those two packages can really help. You can easily Google and find out what trauma-informed means, and person-centered, simply understanding, listening, and opening up conversation. Trying to understand the history of the person, the culture of the person, and how best you can support the person.
I was wanting to ask if you'd like to share how it was like for you navigating the systems, and how did you advocate for yourself when the understanding of mental health is relatively new in our communities and in the mental health space in helping people from our background?
Navigating the system, look, when you have a psychosocial disability and you navigate the system, you're basically navigating yourself. You know, so you're not only navigating the system, you're navigating what's going on inside you as well. So navigating the system was good in a way because I got a lot of support from places like Richmond, which Wajma introduced me to. I got a lot of support from people I talked to because I was able to explain to them, this is my issue, I've had, you know, MDD for this much long, and so I know that there are difficulties in the system, but it's also about how you are progressing towards better health. You know, so it's also utilizing the resources that you have available to help yourself. Advocating for myself, I haven't done as much advocacy as I needed to, but I find it quite rewarding. I find people very receptive, willing to listen, and willing to give you a space.
Yes, so and then what more can we do, or what more can be done in mental health for CaLD people?
Look, the best thing we can do is just open up conversations. You know, this forum is I mean, I wasn't expecting a lot of people, but I was so surprised and happily surprised, pleasantly surprised to see everyone here. I just think that we need to break down the stigma, help young people access the services they need to access. And the role that parents play in that regard is really, really massive. Like, for example, teachers can say to a parent, look, we think this child is having a certain issue, blah, blah, blah. They need to take it on, they need to accept it. The other thing is obviously having medical support accessible to people. Now, if you go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist in the given environment, it takes ages to get to them. And it takes a lot of money to get to them. You know, so we need to make that easier and simpler for people to be able to access the supports that they need. The other thing is mental health education with doctors and teachers and people working in helping professions. For example, I got a lot of support and I still go to them for a lot of help to my pharmacy. Because they not only know that I have a personal problem, they are there for me to chat, to ask me, how are you doing, this, that, blah, blah, blah. And one of the biggest things that we really need to consider is that the rate of suicide in young people is very high these days. So that empathy that they get from a mental health professional or someone in the community can save their lives, basically. You know, so that's me answering part of your question, if that makes sense.
Yes. How parents should show the support if they are constantly with that child or an adult or an older person, how they can show that, yes, I'm here for you, I'm listening. Do we give some advices? Do we navigate pathways for them, or we just listen and become a passive behind the scenes?
Maybe I'll try the first part.
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of formalizing goals, I think that is a challenge for anybody. To understand what you would like to do, what are goals. It is quite a challenging piece to sort of break down for everybody. So, but part of our role is then to, I think one of the key pieces here is we don't know what we don't know. Or people from diverse backgrounds, they don't know what they don't know. So if we could sort of give examples or give options, sort of open their minds, or even give some opportunities to show what can happen, then perhaps they could experience it for themselves, or even in the long run, yep, I want to do that. Or yep, I want to try a hand at employment, I want to, but that can happen only once you get more experiences with that, and also have more conversations, not just with service providers, but with people around you. So I think instead of, we're not leaving to them to just come to that point on their own, we're also encouraging them to share other experiences as well. This is an example. Do you like sports? Do you want to meet friends? Is that something you want to explore? Is that something you want to have in the next 6 months, do you want to maybe take up a skill? So then from there you work with them to sort of, okay, maybe this is what we can do. We're not forcing it on them, we're just offering options.
Good. That's a good response. Just to add on it, I think when you're making goals for a person with a psychosocial disability, and you say that probably the person does not even know what the goal is all about. But the person with psychosocial disability is not living in isolation, isn't it? He's got a circle of friends, families, and other people, and advocates, and support workers around them, all right? So it's good always to do a consultation, have a discussions. And this is the goal. The way I think it's already been mentioned, you ask the person, okay, do you like football, or do you like soccer, or that kind of things, or what type of food do you like, can I make for you, these kind of things. At the same time, you ask the family friends, and this is the thing actually NDI sometimes they don't get it right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because they tell you, okay, we have an individual plan, and the plan is only the person plus probably the therapist around there, okay? It's not involving their independent advocates, it's not involving their family, okay? And then probably they are not even using interpreters. And that can be a challenge. So it's good at least to involve, because when you're making goals, the goals is not only for the participants, it also supports the family and also supports the government, isn't it? So there's an outcome all over, there is the end product is not only the individual, but it's for the community. So that involvement is very important.
I just want to make one point, and that is that we have to stop categorizing people in boxes. For example, people with psychosocial disability, what does recovery look like for them? Individually, each person is different. So each person's journey and life journey is different. So what we need to understand is that we have to stop categorizing them into boxes and say they have to become our version of normal. Right? What is normal? For someone who is not able to navigate a certain process or a certain system, depends on the kind of issue they're experiencing. And then the intervention needs to happen according to that. But I guess, everybody knows that when you are not feeling well, you go to a GP, you go to a doctor, you talk to someone, But I think, as Dr. Siad and Sophia was saying, the NDIS support is there. There are people like, Sophia and Wajma and, who are working in the system. It's a good idea to connect with them and talk to them genuinely and confidentially and take it from there, I guess. Because each individual disability is different. There's a difference between someone who has maybe BPD to someone who has depression, and each person has to be taken care of in a different manner, And again, obviously the stigma needs to be questioned, but I think that validation and acceptance goes a long way. But it also places a bit of onus and responsibility on the person with the disability, Do they want the support? Can they see that they are perhaps unwell in some way?
That invisible disability is a real challenge. We know that. And then culturally, linguistically diverse, they only recognize visible disabilities. You're blind, you're deaf, you have physical disability, if you have a mental disability or psychosocial disability, they're not considered. There's a stigma attached to it. If you have autistic, again, or some other things, cerebral palsy or that kind of things, although cerebral palsy is visible. But again, those things, invisible things, are the things actually that's culturally, the things that we have a lot of stigma on it. So how do you overcome that? Again, it depends with the community attitudes, the systems also, how the system identifies, the early interventions, and the way we already mentioned things like education. Early, if you get the person has information early, and again, there's a way of assessing the disability as quickly as possible. And you know our health system, what is happening with our health system. It really takes time to diagnose disability. And that also is a challenge because in the community out there, we already said, I know of parents who are keeping children who are autistic or they have an intellectual disability, and you tell them, oh, your child looks like he has got a symptom of intellectual disability. And then they tell you, no, don't say that. My child is okay. and then later on it becomes very difficult to put any interventions when it's too late. Okay? So it's very important to educate our community and really give them a lot of information. Sharing is very important. Experiences and knowledge with our community, then that what is invisible can become visible.
All right, so we have come to a close at our Let's Talk Culture series today, talking about everything disabilities in CaLD communities. We deeply appreciate you, Sophia, Dr. Sia, and Saima, for sharing your insight and knowledge, and our audience, all of you for attending, and for your active participation. The event is pretty much finished, and it will be available on our website. Please take a moment to scan the QR code right here and give us some feedback. The survey will also be emailed to you if you attended and signed in. Stay connected with Ishar on social media and visit our website for updates and learn more about the services that we provide. Thank you, and stay tuned to the next Let's Talk Culture event in September, where we will basically do a follow-up talking about carers in the CaLD communities and exploring more about mental health. So one last hand of applause and we're basically finished.